And it starts on Thursday, November 3rd, and it will be at 7 o'clock at Gateway Playhouse in Summers Point, New Jersey. Starts at 7, and on the opening day, we have Howard Paul from Benedetto Guitars, who's a co-sponsor, Benedetto is, with Tony Monaco, Eric Alexander, Jeff Tain Watts, which is the nucleus for Live at Blues Alley. And they will be joined with Chico Pinheiro and Wolf Marshall, who will join them. I don't know exactly who's going to play what. I'm leaving that up to them. That's the first set. Second set would be a tribute to Joyous Lake. And Fareed Haq is coming with his band from Chicago. And he has a CD that's coming out that pays tribute to the Joyous Lake. So he's going to come on board. His band's going to play. At the end of their little session, we have Kenwood Denard, who was the original drummer with Joyous Lake. He's going to join them for a number. And also Eric Alexander, who was on Stone Blue, which also paid tribute to Joyous Lake. And then after that's over, we have a gentleman that's coming in from Greece, Lefteris Christophs. And he's coming in, and he's going to close the night with a solo, playing Both Sides Now. So we're excited about that. After that show, over at another little venue called Gregory's, which we do a lot of jazz programs there. It's a little restaurant, little bar. We're having some of the local guitar players. There'll be Bob Sterling, Ishan Kasani, Michael Kraft, Richard Shepard, John Mulhern, and the Bedessa brothers. Richard and Robert will be the backbone for that. Also coming in is Gino White. And Gino White was with Pat for a lot of years as his road manager. And he's a guitar player. He's not a jazz player, he's a rock player. But he's coming in, he's going to pay his tribute. That's Thursday. And of course, Bill Milkowski is our keynote speaker. He will be harnessing all these people and telling you all about them. On Friday, that's Jim Riddle's night for the first set. He was with Pat for 10 years. And he's going to have Sheryl Bailey, Byron Landon, who was with Pat. They were all playing with Pat. Steve Varner, a bass player. They're going to pay tribute to some of the earlier things that Riddle did. I know when Pat first came out, I wasn't managing them. When he first came back after his aneurysm, Jim Riddle was there, and he did some of the earlier CDs, and I know Bill Milkowski could probably rattle them right off, like The Return, and whatever, there's like 3 or 4 of them. And so they're going to pay tribute to that era. After that, a second set would be on piano. Geez, I gotta look at my sheet here. Okay, so Rick Germanton, who was with Pat for 3 or 4 years, Craig Thomas, who was with Pat, and Byron Landon, and Russell Malone, Jimmy Bruno. They're all going to pay tribute to Pat in that segment, which I'm excited to see and hear Russell Malone and Jimmy Bruno play their segment. After that, we're going to have, to close the night, John Mulhern, who is the reason I even knew Pat. John introduced me to Pat in 26, 27 years ago. And that's where Pat and I met, through John Mulhern. So he's a wonderful guitar player, and he's going to do a duet with Dave O'Rourke. And that will close that night off. And late night on Friday will be a jam session with Tony Monaco, Carmen and Tori holding down the fort, with everybody coming in and playing, hopefully, it'll be a good time. People could sit in and play. A lot of people that wanted to play, we couldn't really fit them in everywhere. They could come in and play. So we're looking forward to Friday jam session. Saturday, that's our Pat Bianchi night. You know, that's Pat Bianchi and Carmen and Tori were with him, like Pat said, for almost 9 years. And they're paying tribute to Pat's last band and his last CD, which was formidable. And we're excited about that. He has 2 horn players that are coming in. Alex Norris, who was on the CD, and Nicole Glover will be holding down the fort for the sax section. Second set is an all-star array of guitar players. Dave Stryker, Jonathan Kriegsberg, Rodney Jones, Barry Green, Mark Whitfield. They're all going to show up and play, and I'm so excited about hearing that. And that's what will happen on Saturday. Then at the end of the night on Saturday, we're going back over Gregory's, and it's just going to be a hang. Everybody can talk and hang and have a cocktail and reminisce. Sunday will be a jazz brunch from 12 to 3, and that's being hosted by Benedetto, and Howard will bring in some Benedetto guitar players, and they're going to close out our celebration.
I'm excited to be at that 4-day event, 3 nights and 4 days, because all these guitar players who are going to be assembled there are profoundly influenced by Pat. I'm sure they're going to have things to say on mic about how Pat affected them, but his playing really was a moment in time that caught the ear of a lot of young players that really followed him and was hugely influenced by him. Every one of the guitarists that you named, Joe, was coming right out of Pat. And
yes.
Of course, Pat was coming right out of Wes, and so it goes with the continuum of all this legacy of jazz guitar playing. Wes was coming out of Charlie Christian. But yeah, those guys are really coming right out of Pat, and I'm excited to hear Russell Malone and Mark Whitfield, Stryker, all of these guys. But also the players that you mentioned, Jim Riddle, for instance. This thing with Pat's discography, he did Joyce like that came out in 77. Then there's a 12-year gap before he comes out with The Return, followed by Interchange, The Maker, and Nightwings. Jim Riddle is on those last 3 albums, so he's really significantly tied to Pat, both in live recordings, live gigs, and these recordings. And someone else you mentioned, Joe, Rick Germanson.
Correct.
I had the pleasure of being at the Orbia Jazz Festival when Pat was there for a week, and Rick was in that band. So I got to see him play every day for a week with that band, and they had a great chemistry. So that'll be a beautiful thing to see Rick paying his own homage to Pat in that session. So I'm excited to not only host it, but to hear this stuff. It's going to be great.
Well, I think, for me, like I had mentioned before, first of all, it's an honor to be a part of it. Any musician that Pat had in his musical world, in his circle, were always world-class musicians. And to be a part of that, and also, to give my chance to pay my respects to him as well, because he had a very large impact in the past 10 years of my life, both musically and personally. So it's very important for me, and I am glad to have that opportunity for sure, as well as, of course, see so many great musicians who interacted with Pat over the years.
Pat Bianchi not only facilitated his role as the organ player, but he also became Pat's road manager. And I can't tell you the difference it made for Pat to have both Carmen and Tori Jr. and Pat Bianchi there. Pat was so thrilled to have them. He would call me and tell me, oh, it was great. They took good care of me. They looked after him. And I will be forever indebted to those two in the last 8, 9 years of Pat's life. They took such good care of him, and publicly thank them.
Well, he became like family at that point. That trio, when we would travel, it morphed from being a working band to family. I mean, hanging out after the gigs, before the gigs, breakfast in the morning, conversations constantly, and was a real special thing too, to have that feeling and that sense of family amongst the three of us on the road.
Obviously, the reason we're live streaming is, where we're doing it live is in South Jersey, and it's a small 220 seat theater. So the whole aspect of live streaming was desirable so it can go worldwide. And that's what we're doing. We're putting it out there. It'll be available after the last performance. There's 72 hours that you have to go ahead and buy and listen to it. Now, we are recording it. It'll go in the archives. I can't tell you if we're going to do anything past that. But for right now, it'll be 3 days. Each day will have a 72-hour life. So after the Thursday, you have 72 hours to listen to Thursday. Same with Friday, same with Saturday. And we're hoping that a lot of people tune in to this great aggregation of Pat Martino fans, artists that love Pat, and that's what it's all about. It was, everyone that I had talked to, they were so excited to come down for Pat. It's exciting.